The city. My Jeep cruised along the highway, a bubble of individual worlds inside. In the back, my two kids debated over the movie choice on the rear entertainment screen, immersed in sibling rivalry. Next to me, my wife of 20 years sat lost in her own thoughts, unaware of the impending change. My wife, Joyce, was of average appearance, neither stunning nor unattractive. Her light brown hair framed her face in soft curls, highlighting her blue eyes. Her fuller legs were, for reasons of my own, particularly appealing to me. Complementarily, she had a more pronounced figure below the waist, which she persistently tried to minimize through exercise. Her smaller upper body never bothered me. My affection for Joyce was comprehensive. From our first encounter 21 years ago, when I was just 20 and she was 22, I was captivated. She was undoubtedly the one I intended to marry and be with indefinitely. However, today marked an unfortunate milestone. It would be our last day together as a family. The kids seemed to sense the shift, but Joyce was blissfully unaware. We were en route to our favorite state park for one last family outing before our son Brian resumed college and our daughter embarked on an exchange program in Europe. The plan was for me to leave on a business trip the next day, but in truth, I was simply leaving for good. As we merged onto the freeway, the kids settled on a movie and the car quieted down for the long drive. These picnics had been Joyce's joy, a chance to escape our hectic life and enjoy tranquil moments together in nature. Over time, Joyce's attachment to the park seemed to grow, perhaps because it was a place untouched by the complexities of our life, including her mixed feelings about our Jeep. Initially, she joked it was like a third child, but later, she quipped it was more akin to a second spouse due to my attention to it. Her absence, often due to her involvement in various charities and causes, became a playful pretext for my need for another wife. I gazed at her face across the car's front seat. She had finally calmed down and seemed more at ease as we drove beyond the city limits. My hand reached for the stereo, and I turned on the radio, where a Fleetwood Mac tune filled the space. At first, I couldn't pinpoint the song, but the distinctive rhythm section was unmistakable, with Mick Fleetwood's dynamic drumming perfectly syncing with John McVie's steady bass. In my earlier days, I played guitar in several heavy metal bands, a stark shift from the classical piano my parents had once insisted on, believing I needed its discipline. Music became my lifelong companion, shaping my emotions and choices, even echoing my inner thoughts. At that moment, the track Little Lies, though not a personal favorite, felt uncannily fitting. Joyce reached to change the station just as Christine McVie's voice filled the car, singing about changing a moment in time. I insisted on keeping the station as it was. The lyrics, sung with poignant clarity, seemed to mirror our current reality. Looking back, I'd loved Joyce deeply, not for her looks but for her spirit and the shared bond that once made me believe she was the only one for me. That belief held firm until 2 weeks ago when I uncovered her infidelity. As the song spoke of altering days, I resonated with the sentiment, wishing I could erase the days she met Matt Blake and the hurt that followed. The reality, like the song, offered no such recourse. So, I decided on giving Joyce one more day, a final day to be with the family she professed to cherish, with the husband she deceived. I'm painting her one last serene portrait of our life, a delightful family outing at her cherished spot, before everything we've forged over 2 decades crumbles, and I step into a new chapter of my life. As we drive, she clasps my hand. "I love you, Bill," she says with a smile. Sometimes I might forget to show it, but never question it, not even for a moment. From the back seat, my daughter lets out a scoff. I can't tell if it's the movie she's watching or her mother's statement that prompted it, but it makes me think, wow, what a facade of sweetness. It's probably because you're all so consumed with school, work, and extracurriculars. I end up feeling isolated at home, which makes my social groups and volunteer work crucial to me, Joyce explains. "Why didn't you just get a pet or something?" My daughter retorts from behind. I drift off, reminiscing about how Stevie Nicks' voice still thrills me after all these years. And Stevie, she's still got it, even past 50. "Do you get what I'm saying, Bill?" Joyce inquires. Sometimes you encounter situations where you can't just stand by. You feel compelled to act and change things. "Oh, he gets it, probably more than you realize," Jessica interjects. "Let's not fight today, Jess," I respond. "No sadness, no disputes. Today, let's just enjoy our time together as a family, keeping the troubles at bay. Tomorrow, we'll each go our separate ways." Joyce nods and smiles warmly. My gaze meets Jessica's in the rearview mirror. She bites her lip and agrees. "Okay." Joyce squeezes my hand once more and rests her head on my shoulder. As she leans in for a kiss, I turn my head away under the guise of reading a road sign, skillfully evading her lips. Chuckles from Jessica in the back seat reveal she noticed. I need to perfect my pretense. For today, I must embody the devoted, affectionate husband I've always appeared to be. Failing that, I'd spoil this final act of kindness for Joyce. As we continue our journey, I ponder her motives. Did she fall out of love, or did she never truly love me as I did her? Perhaps, as she mentioned, our lives were just too filled with other commitments. But that was her choice. She opted out of the rat race, desiring the life of a homemaker and stay-at-home mom. Joyce chose our home, our cars, the kids' schools, our vacations, and their destinations. Every experience we shared was marked by her influence. If she had ever felt discontented or uninterested, she could have spoken up. I couldn't help but wonder what Matt Blake had that appealed to her more than our union. Was it because he was younger? But looking at him, you wouldn't notice the age difference, especially with his thinning hair. And let's be real, he was 35, and I was 40, not a significant age gap. I may not have been an elite athlete, but I maintained my fitness. Matt, on the other hand, seemed rather soft. So, perhaps it wasn't about looks. Maybe, like those tales you hear online, Matt had some exaggerated physical traits that left her wanting more. But the thought made me smirk, knowing that couldn't be the case. Seeing them together, I still couldn't make sense of it. I felt fortunate that after growing suspicious and confirming my doubts through investigators, I had a DNA test done. The children were indeed mine, something that was quite apparent to anyone who saw us together. My son, Brian, takes after me a lot from when I was his age. He's already found a girl he believes he'll spend his life with, Maggie Chu, a petite woman of Asian descent from his school. I wonder if his trust wavered after we discussed his mother's actions. Brian, unlike Jessica and me, isn't much of an actor. He adores his mother but feels deeply hurt by her actions and currently avoids speaking to her. Jessica, however, is furious with her mother and can hardly wait to confront her. She's my main concern at the moment. Despite promising to remain calm, I'm skeptical she can keep her composure throughout the entire picnic without causing a scene. What worries me is that Jessica will be around after I leave tomorrow. I anticipate that things will become tense. Jessica has lost all respect for her mother, and she's already expressed a desire to live with me when she returns from Paris next spring. Although she's welcome anytime, she'll be 17, so the final decision might rest with the court during the divorce proceedings. Divorce is such a painful concept. It's strange how just a few letters arranged in a certain way can dismantle your world, causing a deep, lingering pain that surpasses any physical injury. As we enter the park, I stop to pay the entrance fee. Perhaps we should get a pass for unlimited access, suggests Joyce. I didn't think we'd visit often with the kids away, I reply. This has always been one of our favorite spots, Joyce remarks. We should continue to come here as much as we can, just like before. Just us two? I questioned, feeling dubious. Absolutely, she replied with a smile. I wouldn't want to be here with anyone else. Her words flowed smoothly, yet in my mind, I could almost hear Stevie Nicks' haunting voice crooning, "Tell me lies." Shortly after, we busied ourselves with unpacking the food, blankets, and other necessities for the day. "Jess, keep the blanket away from the grill," I called out. "Sure thing, Daddy," she responded with a grin. "I only placed it there because Mom mentioned she was feeling chilly." "No, dear, I didn't say that," Joyce interjected. "You might be mixing it up with a different visit." "Close by now," Jessica murmured just low enough for me to hear, "or perhaps preparing you for a fiery climate, you traitor." I glanced at her, realizing the toll our separation was taking on the children. The pain was evident in my life, but it was clear the kids were struggling too. Brian had Maggie for support, sharing his feelings and gaining comfort. Meanwhile, Joyce's behavior was causing friction in their bond, leading Brian to doubt her and scrutinize her movements more. Then there was Jess. My sweet girl seemed to be battling with her own anger. I needed to talk to her school counselor about arranging therapy sessions for her and to spend more quality time with her. Additionally, I had to accelerate my move from the planned apartment to a house. "Dad, ready for our lake trip to see who can toss a stone furthest?" Brian inquired. It was our little tradition. He used to win until he turned 16, and since then, he's been inching closer to my record. Maybe this year he'd surpass me, especially since my heart wasn't quite in it. "Soon, champ," I replied. "First, let's fire up the grill and start cooking." He smiled, nodded, and then reached for his phone, trying to contact Maggie. "Dad, there's no signal here," he complained, frustrated. I couldn't help but chuckle. "Brian, race you to the lake," Jessica shouted, dashing off before her brother could even process the challenge. This left me to face the moment I'd been dreading since sunrise. Joyce had spread a blanket on the grass, beckoning me to join her. "I need to start the grill, honey," I said, "but save me a spot next to you. I've been looking forward to that all day." My ability to play along was improving. Joyce wasn't the only one capable of bending the truth. What happened next, though incredibly silly, was a performance I was proud of. Joyce sent a playful kiss my way. I pretended to catch it with my left hand, twirled, and then acted as though I caught it with my right, softly touching my cheek. Unseen, I discarded the pretend kiss to the ground, stepping on it. Joyce, oblivious to my act, smiled. "I wonder how you'd react to a real kiss," she teased. "We'll see later," I responded. These little fabrications were spreading like wildfire. "I'm off to pick some wildflowers," she said, her smile lingering. "Make sure there's something on the grill for me when I return. Oh, and send Jess my way if you see her. She loves flower picking too." I nodded as she walked away, then turned back briefly. "Bill, I'm so happy you convinced me to come today. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. We need to prioritize our time together. It's easy to get caught up in less important things. We've always been together and assume we always will be, but we should consciously spend more quality time like we used to," she said, then left to find her flowers. That felt like the sweetest fib I'd ever heard. A tear rolled down my cheek as I remembered my love for her, thinking how today might have gone differently if I hadn't persuaded her to join. I prepared the grill with charcoal and lighter fluid, the familiar routine allowing my thoughts to drift again. I recalled the pain of watching the video the investigators provided. Alone in my office, while Joyce was at a charity meeting, I saw the footage of Matt visiting our home. They thought they were alone, their actions caught on a hidden camera in our living room. They were perched on my couch, sipping coffee, but the awkwardness was palpable, even through the video feed. Their conversation was filled with trivialities, making me question why he tolerated it. Then Joyce, driven by impulse, shifted the mood. Her actions were unforgivable. She inquired if he found her legs unattractive, mentioning her husband's admiration but expressing her own insecurities about their appearance. He responded that he couldn't judge from his limited view. This led Joyce to provocatively hike up her skirt. "Well, from what I can see, they seem fine," Matt responded, his voice laden with implication, "but it's tough to say without seeing everything." "I suppose you want the full view then," Joyce retorted, with a knowing smile. I recognized that mischievous look, similar to the one she shared with me during intimate moments. Joyce then daringly lifted her skirt, revealing too much. Matt's reaction was evident, and within moments, he was beside her. Their encounter was far from the sensational scenes one might expect. It was more awkward and uncoordinated. Watching Matt and Joyce fumble was unexpectedly amusing. Their attempt at passion appeared more clumsy than sensual, and I couldn't help but laugh at the scene. I pondered if Matt understood the consequences of his actions. In less than a day, his life would drastically change. As for Joyce, my once cherished partner, I hoped she would find contentment. I resolved to handle the situation with dignity, opting for a civilized approach rather than resorting to primitive reactions. The superior person would prevail, as it should be. My focus would be on ensuring the welfare of my children. I intended to have my lawyers present Joyce with my divorce and settlement terms, leaving no room for negotiation. She would have to accept my offer, modest as it was, or face nothing. Opting for divorce would tarnish her reputation, as I was prepared to fiercely protect my interests, and ensure her standing in our community would suffer significantly. Neither the kids nor I would be affected because Brian would be away at college on the other side of the country, and Jessica would be in Paris. After the controversies settled, Joyce would find herself unwelcome in her usual social circles and charity events around town. Her only option would be to leave and start afresh elsewhere. The simplest path for her would be to agree to my conditions and move forward with her life, as I was coming to terms with her decisions and making peace with moving on myself. As I sat in my den that day, absorbed in the scene unfolding on the screen, I was so engrossed that I didn't notice my daughter approaching until she was right behind me. She comforted me, acknowledging the harsh truth we both faced. We shared a moment of silent understanding before discussing the situation. Jess admitted she had known about everything from the start, revealing that the situation had been brewing for months, though it had escalated only recently. I expressed my inability to forgive, a sentiment echoed by Jess. We agreed on handling the situation with grace and discretion, urging each other to maintain composure until we figured out our next steps. Caught up in my thoughts, I didn't hear Joyce approach until she commented on the excessive lighter fluid I'd used on the grill. I managed the situation, ensuring safety, and then invited her to join me in a moment of calm before addressing the tension between us. I sat beside her, and she gently placed her hand in mine. "Bill, I've been reflecting on our journey to this point," she began. "We've never broached this topic, but as we stand on the brink of a new chapter, I can't help but feel we haven't quite closed the last one." Her words puzzled me, or at least I pretended they did, craving distance from the woman next to me. My mind was haunted by the image of her in that video, an image I wished I could erase. "Looks like you're puzzled," she observed. "Being here, surrounded by those I hold dear, has shifted my perspective somewhat." Jess mentioned something that got me thinking. With the kids grown and moving out, I felt a sense of loss, as if my own worth had diminished. I thought maybe I needed to reignite the spark in my life. Her admission stunned me. She was on the verge of confessing to an affair, a reality I had never anticipated confronting. What now of my calculated plans for retaliation? So, I threw myself into various committees, thinking it might bridge the gap I felt inside. But instead, it only widened the distance between us, maybe without your realization. I responded, feigning contemplation of her words. Inside, I sarcastically urged her to admit to her indiscretions with the unremarkable man I despised in my thoughts. "Did you notice it's been a couple of weeks since we've been intimate?" she inquired, seeking my reaction. Internally, I seethed. Of course, why would I seek your touch after what I witnessed with Matt? "No, darling, I hadn't noticed," I lied smoothly. "I thought perhaps you were looking forward to more private times together, maybe even fantasizing about a carefree life at home," she suggested with a hopeful smile. The thought couldn't have been further from my truth. "You often joked about a world where I had no need for clothes, where spontaneity ruled our days," she recalled with a smile. "But I guess some of those ideas will need to wait." In my head, I scoffed at the notion of waiting for anything with her. "We're not at the stage to consider retiring yet, Bill," she said with an affectionate grin. I love you, and I've been thinking about us having another child. Suddenly, I found myself struggling to breathe, my throat constricted and coughs racking my body. Joyce was quick to react, patting my back to clear the blockage. My mind raced with wild thoughts. Could Joyce be carrying Matt's child, planning to deceive me into believing it was mine? I dismissed the thought, realizing it was too early for such news. Or was she hoping to conceive with Matt and then deceive me? Was she trying to rekindle our dwindling intimacy, which she had inadvertently sabotaged? I couldn't pinpoint her motive, nor did I want to dwell on it. I resolved to cherish our final day together before seeking my escape. In that moment of introspection, a song by Christine McVie offered me clarity. The lyrics resonated with me, particularly the line, "Although I'm not making plans, I hope that you'll understand there's a reason why." Joyce, let's not make any plans for now. I hope you understand there's a reason why I'm hesitant to commit to anything, I told her, echoing the song's sentiment. Her response was teasing. Oh, keeping me all to yourself for a bit, are you? That's quite self-centered. Have you been daydreaming about our time alone once the kids are gone? I managed a smile and a nod, my thoughts darkening with images of finality and severance, a stark contrast to her light-hearted banter. The violent fantasies startled me, a testament to how deeply her actions had affected me. The song's advice played in my mind, suggesting separation might be our best path. Lately, Joyce seemed to evoke only my darkest emotions. She guided my hand from her heart to her breast, igniting a physical response as she drew me closer. But our moment was interrupted by Jessica, innocently inquiring about our barbecue plans. Gratefully, I turned my attention to the grill, laying out an assortment of meats and fish, each wrapped carefully in foil. Joyce's playful remark hinted at understanding my desire for solitude. As Brian called out, eager for a lakeside adventure, with Jessica joining as our enthusiastic referee, I followed, leaving the tension behind, if only for a moment. Brian launched his first stone, nearly reaching the edge of the log floating in the lake's center, a testament to the local kids' handiwork. He grinned proudly, challenging, "Top that, Dad." Gripping a stone, my thoughts lingered on Matt's thinning hair and pallid skin. Releasing the stone, I envisioned confronting Matt with a forceful blow. "Whoa, Dad," Brian exclaimed, "that was some throw." It soared right over the log, almost crossing the lake. Both Jessica and Brian looked at me, wide-eyed. "I think it's time for lunch," I suggested, feigning cheer, aware we shouldn't leave Mom by herself too long. "Yeah, or we might catch her cozying up with a park ranger," Jessica quipped, sarcasm lacing her words. I tensed, but Brian chuckled. "Picture that," he joked. "They'd be so intense it might spark a wildfire," prompting Smokey the Bear to promote specially designed protective gear to prevent forest fires. "Only you can prevent forest fires," Jessica mimicked in a deep, playful tone. Returning to camp, we found only the hot dogs ready, which became our meal. Post-lunch, Brian opted for a nap in the Jeep, while Joyce showed Jessica the wildflower spots. Jessica proposed a hike, so we set off, leaving Joyce with her flowers. During the hike, I conveyed to Jess that the situation with Joyce and me was not her fault, assuring her of our unchanging parental love. I hinted at the impending challenges, suggesting Joyce would need her support, which Jess met with disdain, questioning why she should support someone who hurt our family. At a loss, I simply responded, "Because she's your mother, and deep down, you love her." "Men are often oblivious," Jess remarked, focusing on work, sports, or cars, while women discern the subtle signs. "It's humiliating how many know about Mom's indiscretion with a younger man." I halted in my tracks, focusing on her. "I love you, Daddy," she expressed. "In the spring, after school, and during my Christmas break, I plan to stay with you." The remainder of the day sped by as we engaged in various wholesome activities. We played with a frisbee, lay back to find shapes in the clouds, enjoyed plenty of food, and accompanied Joyce to admire her favorite wildflowers. Our return to the camp for dinner was a tired one, following our floral adventure, where my son nearly spilled a secret. "It's unbelievable that we won't do this again," Brian mused. "We will, though," Joyce countered, as Brian, Jess, and I looked on in astonishment. Brian began, but what I meant was. Joyce cut in, "I get it, love. Maybe next time you'll bring Maggie along, and Jessica might bring someone too. Perhaps you and Maggie will even introduce me to my first grandchild. We'll always come here. The family will just expand," she suggested, nudging me with a smile. "Maybe it will be even better," Brian agreed, his smile broadening, relieved he hadn't revealed too much. Joyce kissed me then, oblivious to Jessica scowling at her brother. The kisses Joyce and I have shared are numerous, but this one felt uniquely poignant. It seemed the sadness in Brian's words prompted her to invest more in the kiss, as though our whole relationship was balanced on this moment. "Have you thought about what I proposed?" she asked, her eyes brimming with hope. In her gaze, I saw the depth of her love. For a moment, I contemplated being intimate with Joyce again, considering the potential consequences. However, I realized the impact it could have, especially the thought of any future responsibilities and commitments. As night fell, we loaded up the Jeep, yawning through the preparations for our journey home. The trip was elongated by the need to drop Brian off for his late-night flight back to college, granting him another day with Maggie before the academic routine started again. Maggie had already returned to school, likely unaware of Brian's upcoming visit. I believe Brian was planning to visit their place late at night to check on her, to see if she was there and if so, whether she was alone. Joyce's actions had caused so much turmoil, impacting our children and tearing at the fabric of our family. Her actions, driven by her own issues, had affected many lives, leaving a lasting scar. I wondered if it was all worth it for her. "Can you drive okay, dear?" she inquired. "Yes, I'm fine," I replied. "Just a lot on my mind." "Really?" she probed. "Have you reached any conclusions?" My mind was elsewhere, but I figured one more harmless fib wouldn't do any harm. I wanted to make the day memorable for us, a last reflection of our long shared life and love. As the lyrics go, I couldn't find a way, so I'll settle for one day to believe in you. I thought the best way to end on a high note was to let her believe she was getting her wish. And pondering over names, I softly said. The expression on her face was unforgettable, a mix of love, admiration, and desire. It was the look she used to give me until her affair with Matt began, which had since turned her glances into ones filled with guilt and uncertainty. "Will we have a special night when you return from your trip?" she murmured, touching my hand suggestively. "We should wait until after my trip," I suggested. "We wouldn't want to be overheard, and it's better to be cautious." Driving home, with a stop at the airport planned, I was conflicted. Joyce seemed to be her old self again, her constant hand-holding suggesting she still cared deeply, despite everything. Perhaps this was just a lapse, a moment of boredom and neglect, rather than a fundamental flaw in our marriage. But as these thoughts surfaced, I realized my judgment was clouded. Unlike the emotional intuition often guiding women, men like me tend to rely on instinct and logic. My initial reaction was one of betrayal and anger towards Joyce and Matt. My analysis led me to believe that if Joyce had deceived me once and got away with it, she'd likely do it again. Both my intuition and logic were signaling that it was time to move on, despite my heart's protests. I wasn't willing to spend my life at the whim of her unpredictable behavior. Life's too short to not enjoy it fully. At the airport, Joyce and Jess were both sleeping as I dropped Brian off. I discreetly handed him some money, even though he already had a debit card for expenses. After another heartfelt hug, he mentioned, "Dad, once you decide on your office transfer, let me know. Jess and I are hoping for Hawaii. Also, Maggie and I will visit for Christmas, and we might go to her parents' place for Thanksgiving. That should give you enough time to set up your new place. But keep me posted. Thanksgiving by the beach sounds amazing." "Brian, what if your mom and I stay together?" I inquired. He gave me a skeptical look. "Then it might be a tough Christmas, with you wondering if she's receiving gifts from her friend, or having to count the seats at the table to ensure she hasn't invited him. And it would be hard, always feeling on edge about her actions. I love you, Dad, just do what's best for you. We'll support you regardless." He then affectionately ruffled Jessica's hair and kissed her forehead, whispering, "Don't tell her about this." With that, he walked towards the terminal, mature beyond his years. Driving back home, Joyce, half asleep, reached for my hand while Jess murmured in her sleep. Joyce's murmured "love you, Billy," only deepened my confusion. The notion of her expressing love in her sleep puzzled me. Was it genuine, or was it an act? And her behavior with Matt differed so much from how she was with me. Was she pretending with him, or had our 2 decades together been a facade? Was I about to discard 20 years over her mistake? Doubts about my exit strategy began to surface. Leaving without explanation felt cowardly. After 2 decades, didn't Joyce deserve to know why our marriage was ending? Perhaps the mature approach would be to sit down with Joyce and Matt, over coffee, and discuss everything openly like adults. What was I thinking? I must have been watching too many of those drama-filled TV shows. She had betrayed me. She didn't deserve anything from me. "Wake me when we get to the airport so I can say goodbye to Brian," she mumbled. We left the airport 20 minutes ago," I said. "We'll be home in another 15 minutes. Joyce's eyes snapped open. "Brian is gone?" she asked. I nodded. "But he didn't say goodbye or anything," she said, clearly upset. "He kissed me goodbye," Jessica chimed in, with a hint of mischief. "It was hard to act like I was asleep while your brother was saying farewell. I guess that's their way of showing love." "Go back to sleep, Jess," I told her. Her smirk in the rearview mirror said she had made her point. "He knew you were tired, Joyce," I said soothingly. "He wanted you to rest, especially with all the extra work waiting for you after taking a day off to be with us." "I should be with you guys," she said firmly. "No more committees, no more charity work, no more projects. Just the one you and I will work on together." Was she being honest, or was it another lie? I couldn't discern anymore. Arriving home, I carried Jessica to her room. "Love you, Daddy," she whispered. "Forever and ever." "Love you too, sweetheart," I replied, heading for the door. "Make sure to call me when my plane lands so I can hear about her reaction," she said sharply, now fully awake. "And Dad, I'm choosing to live with you. At my age, I have a say in who I stay with. And choose Hawaii. I look great in summer wear, and I get along well with Claudia." I pondered why she mentioned Claudia. "Jess, if you're awake, why did I need to carry you up the stairs?" I asked. "Because today might be the last time we do something like this," she said softly. "I remember feeling so safe when you carried me up these stairs and tucked me in. We might never come back here, so I wanted to experience that one last time. I just nodded, understandingly. Perhaps in a different home, or maybe one day you'll see me carry my granddaughter up the stairs in your place, I mused. That'd be nice, Dad. And while you're at it, you can explain to her why she doesn't have a grandmother, she retorted with a tinge of bitterness. Who knows, I pondered aloud, maybe there's still a chance to mend things. No, Dad, she responded, her voice heavy with sadness. It's beyond repair. You're not that person. And if you were, you wouldn't be the dad I admire and cherish. It's time you start anew, with someone who truly loves you. Perhaps someone is already out there waiting for you. I returned to the car, finding Joyce still asleep. Gently, I opened the door and lifted her out of the seat. Instinctively, her arms encircled my neck, and I carried her up to our bedroom. I laid her on the bed, removed her clothes with care, and tucked her in. After a soft kiss, she murmured, "Love you, Billy," her words hanging between truth and fiction. But in that moment, the difference seemed trivial. "I love you too, Joyce," I whispered back, as a single tear trailed down my face, the last one I'd shed for her. In the bed that had been ours from the start of our marriage, I lay thinking about its end, a poignant full-circle moment. My mind raced with questions. Was my judgment sound? Should I attempt to salvage our relationship? Did my love for her warrant one last try? The thought of her with Matt in our bed stirred anger within me. Was it him she desired over me, or was he just a convenient choice in a moment of need? I had devoted my life to providing for her, and this felt like the ultimate betrayal. Eventually, I drifted into a fitful sleep, plagued by visions of Joyce and Matt in my home, my children with them, while I was relegated to an outsider's existence. Before dawn, I showered, dressed, and packed my essentials. In the quiet of the morning, I embraced my daughter, saying farewell. "Love you, Daddy," she murmured, half awake. "A new chapter begins," she smiled faintly. "Catch up soon, and say hi to Claudia for me." Jessica would be off to the airport in a few hours, leaving Joyce alone for the first time. Despite everything, I wished her happiness, hoping Matt could provide what I could not. The surprises I had planned would definitely test their love, I mused with a chuckle. Climbing into my car, I felt a mix of emotions. The end of my marriage marked a failure, yet I was also curious about what the future held. Driving to the airport, I decided to call the office. Expecting to leave a message for my former assistant Claudia, I was surprised when I couldn't reach her voicemail. After dialing the main office number, I got through to a real person instead. Ellen Magnuson, our receptionist, picked up, and her presence in the office at such an early hour took me aback. "I'm always here at this time," she informed me. "I need to leave a message for Claudia Denton," I said. "Claudia is no longer here," Ellen replied. "She transferred out yesterday." "Where did she go?" I inquired. "I'm not sure," Ellen admitted. I was taken aback. Claudia had been my right-hand person for a decade, starting fresh from college and becoming an indispensable part of my work life. Realizing how poorly I had treated her amidst my personal turmoil with Joyce pained me. I resolved to give it a few days before trying to reach out to her again. With that matter temporarily resolved, I proceeded to the transport company I had contracted. I had picked the Honolulu office for my new position, not because of Jessica, but I was happy it would please her. At the transport office near the airport, they arranged to ship my car to the island, which would arrive a day after me. I then took a shuttle bus to the airport, checked in, and sat waiting for my flight. Shortly after, a woman took a seat next to me. Without looking up, I noticed her distinct, appealing perfume and the elegant shape of her legs. They were different from Joyce's, yet they had a charm of their own. As my gaze unintentionally moved upwards, she caught me off guard with a comment about her physique and inquired about my marital status, prompting an awkward moment. "I used to be," I responded, hinting at a shift in my perspective. "But now, I'm exploring new possibilities." "Shouldn't you be at work, Claudia?" I asked with a smile. "You're the finest assistant anyone could wish for." She grinned back. "I know I am. But I'm also considering other possibilities now." "Claudia," I started, "you didn't need to leave the company just because I did." "I haven't left," she clarified. "I'm simply moving to wherever you're headed." Puzzled, I asked, "How did you know about my departure or my next steps?" She smiled. "I arranged all your plans, remember? Plus, Jessica filled me in. She thinks we could be a great match and didn't want you to face this transition alone." I eyed her with a hint of suspicion, but her smile never wavered. "Bill, I've been hoping to step beyond being just your assistant for a long time," she confessed. "Don't I get a chance too? I'm not asking for marriage or a commitment. How about we just see how things go, one day at a time?" With a smile, I extended my hand towards her. Joyce was jolted awake when the phone rang persistently. It was too early, and the call was insistent, breaking through the silence of the early hours. Curiously, Bill hadn't answered. He should have been awake, preparing for his airport trip. She reminisced about the pleasant dreams she had, envisioning the joyful times with Bill upon his return. Her secret with Matt remained safe. Bill was none the wiser. She relished her life, having both the stability and luxury provided by her husband and the adoration from Matt, a younger admirer. Everything seemed perfect. Annoyed, she answered the call. "Hello, Joyce, it's me, Matt. I can't meet today, maybe not ever," he mumbled, sounding intoxicated. Joyce wondered why he would be in such a state so early. She had resolved to break it off with Matt, realizing their relationship had no future. She truly loved Bill, and their recent time together, coupled with the news of expecting another child, reaffirmed her commitment to him. Matt was just a fleeting distraction. "I love you, Joyce," Matt blurted out, his voice shaky, possibly teary. "Are you crying, Matt?" she inquired, sensing the manipulation in his attempt to make their separation difficult. She was frustrated by his inability to accept the end of their liaison. "Joyce, it hurts so much," he lamented. "What's wrong, Matt?" she asked, half-heartedly. Joyce couldn't see Matt's appeal anymore. He was unattractive, out of shape, lacking ambition, and still lived with his mother. Their physical encounters were disappointing and short-lived. She initially thought she could guide him but soon realized her loyalty to Bill was stronger. "Joyce, we're in trouble," he slurred. "I can't handle this, it's not worth it. My mother will be furious." "Matt," Joyce responded coolly, disdainful of his dependency on his mother. "Our interaction was never about love, just physical." "Joyce, please be honest," Matt pleaded. "I feel a connection, but it's futile." Frustrated, Joyce listened as Matt described losing his job due to a workplace policy against inappropriate relationships, a consequence of their secret affair. He was devastated, having lost a job he held since high school over a misguided attempt to express his affection. "When I mounted my bicycle to head home, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone might have caught wind of our affair, aiming to stir up trouble. No sooner had I zipped past the alley behind the store, gaining speed, than a towering teenager emerged and struck me so forcefully I tumbled from my bike. Regaining consciousness, I found both the assailant and my bicycle had vanished. I trudged towards home, only to be ambushed by two imposing men who assaulted me savagely. Throughout the ordeal, they taunted me for my liaison with a married woman. I later regained awareness in a hospital, with my mother at my side, urging me to sever ties with you, Joyce. Despite her warnings, my feelings for you remain unchanged." The line went dead, leaving Joyce to grapple with a tumult of emotions. She speculated that Matt's mother orchestrated the events, a severe tactic to sever their connection after discovering Joyce's marital status. This act of tough love involved terminating Matt's job, orchestrating the theft of his bicycle, and arranging his beating, adult repercussions mirroring childhood disciplines. Concluding that her heart belonged to another, Joyce felt no space for Matt in her life. As she contemplated making breakfast, she considered driving her daughter, Jessica, to the airport, seeking to mend their strained relationship and restore family closeness, despite recent distances. Things appeared to be improving with Bill, her husband, following a period of strain. Determined to reaffirm her love, she felt confident in regaining his trust. However, her morning took an unexpected turn when she discovered an envelope in the kitchen, which was interrupted by a taxi's honk outside. Jessica descended the stairs just as Joyce, reading the enigmatic note within the envelope, was instructed to engage the DVD player and proceed to the next page of the note. Joyce pressed play and watched in horror as the video of her last encounter with Matt unfolded on the large TV in the living room. Jessica breezed past Joyce, remarking, "Goodbye, Mother. I trust you cherished your final moments with Dad yesterday. He intended it to be memorable for you, but you won't be seeing him or, hopefully, me ever again." Turning her attention to the letter from the envelope, Joyce initially thought it was from Matt's mother. However, reading further, her darkest fears were confirmed. "Goodbye, Joyce. Was Matt worth losing your husband, your marriage, and your family for? I gave you my whole heart and was shattered when I discovered your deception. Soon, someone will deliver divorce papers to you." Overwhelmed, Joyce sobbed as she read on, "You must sign the settlement promptly. If you do, we can finalize an amicable divorce citing irreconcilable differences. My lawyer will reach out to discuss Jessica's custody arrangements until she turns 18. You'll get 25% of our assets, including the house, which is now for sale. You have 30 days to relocate. I hope Matt has space for you. If you refuse to sign, I will ensure your reputation is so tarnished that staying in our town will be unbearable. Considering our once blissful life, the financial offer is substantial. Your actions still baffle me. I have no desire to see or speak to you ever again. Our final day together was significant for me, filled with contemplation. Maybe I could have overlooked the physical betrayal. Despite everything, my love for you persists, Joyce. But the trust is irreparably broken. I couldn't spend our lives in constant doubt, wondering if your meetings or shopping trips were just cover-ups for your rendezvous with Matt. You deceived me repeatedly, Joyce. Even if the physical aspect was recent, the deceit was not. Ultimately, it wasn't the absence of love or forgiveness that ended us, Joyce. It was the perpetual dishonesty. All those sweet little lies. Reading the letter, Joyce felt a profound emptiness. She had never anticipated any of this, having embarked on the affair out of mere ennui. Her lifelong ambition had been simple, to be a devoted wife and mother. Meeting Bill in college, she thought she had achieved her dream. But as time went on, she felt as if life was just slipping by unnoticed. The last few years had been rough for Joyce. Her children, Ryan and Jessica, were practically adults now, needing her less and less. Bill, her husband, was deeply invested in his career, often away at work during the week, despite having arranged his schedule to be home more for the family. At his job, he had Claudia, his highly competent assistant, which meant Joyce felt increasingly unnecessary in matters related to his work. Over time, Joyce grew resentful of Claudia's efficiency and youth, leading her to exclude Claudia from social gatherings. Joyce's discomfort peaked when, at a company dinner, she overheard remarks about the close relationship between Bill and Claudia, speculating on their compatibility. This fueled her suspicion of an affair, though Claudia's professional demeanor towards Bill was clear. Driven by jealousy, Joyce hired a detective to monitor them, only to discover after extensive and costly investigation that their relationship was purely professional. Joyce was torn between relief and frustration, regretting the fortune spent to uncover Bill's loyalty, a fact she realized she had known deep down all along. Bill's devotion to her and their family was evident, yet Joyce often questioned why he was so loving towards her, given her self-perceived physical inadequacies. Bill had always expressed his attraction to Joyce, making her feel desired, but something had shifted recently. Joyce's own secrets began to unravel when she noticed the sudden departure of her daughter, hinting at Bill's awareness of her own indiscretion, leaving Joyce to face the consequences of her actions. If there was anyone who knew Bill's whereabouts and how to contact him, it would be Jessica. Jessica and her father had a tight bond. While Bill loved his son, he adored his daughter, and she reciprocated his affection. Perhaps this deep connection was why Jessica had been so short with Joyce lately. It was evident that Jessica knew about Joyce's disloyalty to her father, and her cold behavior and snarky remarks were her silent protests against Joyce. "Jessica, wait!" Joyce yelled, as her daughter stepped into the cab. Jessica turned to face her mother, gestured dismissively with her hand, and then entered the cab, shutting the door behind her. As the cab pulled away, Joyce, clad in her robe, ran after it, only to step on a sharp object and injure her foot. Hobbling back toward her house, Joyce's attention was caught by a loud whistle from across the street. The unsettling neighbor was signaling to her, but overwhelmed by her own turmoil, she ignored him and continued on. Reaching her front door, she found it locked. Feeling exposed and defeated on her doorstep, Joyce's mind raced with worry. Bill was away, supposedly on business, but doubt crept in about his actual whereabouts. She felt abandoned, questioning if he had left her intentionally. Her children were unreachable, with Brian having returned to college, showing affection to his sister but neglecting any farewell to Joyce, hinting that he might know of her actions and disapproved. Joyce's thoughts were interrupted by the awareness of her exposed position and the realization that the nosy neighbor might be watching her through his telescope. Quickly adjusting herself, she contemplated an alternative way to enter her house. Thinking the backyard door might be unlocked, she considered climbing over the fence. After struggling to hoist herself up and using a trash can as a makeshift step, Joyce managed to clamber over the fence, driven by the desperate need to find solace within her home. "Oh my goodness, what a sight!" she overheard from behind. Joyce glanced back and noticed an elderly man sitting on the curb, observing her through a video camera. She had gone too far to consider turning around. She managed to swing her leg over the fence, reaching the other side, then landed firmly on the ground. Moving to her deck, she reached for her sliding patio door. Inside, she noticed the main door was ajar. However, the screen door resisted her attempts to slide it open. Despite wanting to force her way through, Joyce hesitated, mindful of her already injured foot and the thought of damaging her property. Feeling frustrated and beaten, she opted to seek a locksmith's help from a neighbor's place, relieved that she didn't need to vault back over the fence. There was a gate on the other side of the yard, yet it only opened from the inside. Joyce returned to the front, pondering which neighbor might still be awake. The elderly man was still there, recording her. "Doesn't Bill insist on grooming standards?" the elderly man inquired inappropriately. "I could use your help," Joyce responded, securing her robe. "May I use your phone? Given your indiscreet observation, it seems only fair." The man rose and moved toward his house, with Joyce following, alert to any onlookers. "The phone is over there," he indicated. Joyce spotted the phone directory under the table holding the phone and picked it up. The man abruptly closed the directory, causing Joyce to look at him, puzzled. "What?" she started. "You agreed the phone was for allowing me a glance outside, correct?" he queried. Joyce, apprehensive, nodded. "You may use the phone, but the directory comes at an extra," he said with a sly grin. "How am I supposed to find a locksmith without the directory?" Joyce inquired. "That's your concern," the man replied, unyielding. "A deal's a deal. What do you want?" Joyce asked, clearly agitated. "Just leave the robe," he suggested with a smirk. Joyce began to cry, allowing her robe to slip off. The old man took his hand off the telephone directory, and Joyce started searching for a locksmith. She found one available early in the morning and was about to call when the old man cut off the connection. "Why did you do that?" Joyce demanded, her voice breaking. "You've mocked me and insulted me. You've degraded me in your house as if it were a favor. What more do you want?" "I'm sorry," the old man replied. "It might be hard to understand, but your visit is likely the highlight of my summer. I seldom encounter such situations, unless it's through media, which quickly loses its charm. You see, I was once happily married until I betrayed her trust. My infidelity ruined everything. I was drawn to someone else, thinking it was exciting, but it was a fleeting and empty experience. That mistake cost me dearly. My wife discovered my betrayal, and nothing I said could mend the bond we had. Over time, I realized the depth of my loss, but it was too late. She moved on and started a new life. I learned the hard way that what seems tempting often leads to regret. We all face such illusions. The person I was involved with also suffered greatly. Her life spiraled downward after my actions came to light, affecting her family too. In the end, nobody won from this ordeal. The old man's voice trembled as he shared his story, his eyes moist as he wiped Joyce's tears. He then posed a reflective question to Joyce, who listened intently. What is the opposite of good? Unfortunate, Joyce remarked. No, countered the elderly gentleman. The opposite of good is better. I had a fulfilling life, but like many, I spoiled it in the pursuit of something greater. Your resemblance to my wife unsettled me. I overlooked your feelings, captivated by the pleasure of your company. When I saw your tears, I halted and chose to give you this, he explained, offering Joyce a key. What is this? She inquired. It's the key to your house. Your husband entrusted it to me for the care of your plants and mail during your vacation. Thank you, Joyce responded. I apologize for my inappropriate behavior, he confessed. I'm not malevolent, just isolated. Joyce hurried back to her home, dialing Bill's number only to reach his voicemail. Unsure of what to convey, she postponed her message, needing time to formulate her apology. The elder's admission struck a chord with Joyce. Her circumstances mirrored his. She cherished a vibrant marriage, now jeopardized by her actions. The estrangement from her children compounded her regret. Facing the reality of the divorce settlement, she acknowledged the temporary relief of the financial gain but recognized its insufficiency for long-term security. The prospect of employment loomed large, given her lack of work experience. Determined to mend her relationship with Bill, Joyce felt the urgency of reconciliation. The doorbell's ring interrupted her thoughts. Standing at the door was a young woman, briefcase in hand, asking, Joyce Williams. Yes, replied Joyce, curious about the purpose of the visit. You're being served, announced the girl. What? Joyce exclaimed. It's too soon. I'm not prepared. I'm uncertain about my next steps. I expected someone else. I just need your signature on these documents, the girl stated, showing disinterest. Joyce reflected on her actions and the harm she caused others. Fearing further damage to her reputation, she reluctantly signed the documents. After the girl left, Joyce sat down, overwhelmed by emotion, and wept. Thousands of miles away, 2 days later, Claudia emerged from the hotel bathroom and noticed Bill distressed at the table. She comforted him, saying, It'll get better, honey, despite knowing the deep impact of his first marriage's end. Aware that the bond with the first partner and shared children leaves enduring marks, she pondered their future, hopeful yet realistic about the challenges of moving past his memories of Joyce. My comment, I think many people could somehow get to live with a partner they really love if it was just about bonding. Revenge bonding could be a way, but the deceit, lies, and the disrespect that represents would be way too much.